Her ex cheated and laughed until the mafia boss appeared and said, "She's not yours." The betrayal did not come as a whisper. It came as a slam. It was the sound of her own apartment door, the one she paid half the rent on, hitting the wall as she pushed it open. Groceries spilling from the paper bag in her arms. It was 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. Ava Moretti was supposed to be at her desk, finalizing spreadsheets. Jake, her boyfriend of 3 years, was supposed to be at a client meeting. But Ava had felt the familiar migraine creeping up her neck and had left the office early, hoping for a dark room and silence. She got neither. The sound she heard from the bedroom was not one of pain, but of aggressive, rhythmic pleasure. Ava's migraine vanished, replaced by a cold, metallic rush in her ears. She did not move. She just stood by the spilled apples and the broken carton of eggs, listening. She recognized the laugh. It was Sarah. Sarah from accounting, the one who always complimented Ava's shoes. When the bedroom door finally opened 20 minutes later, Jake emerged, pulling a shirt over his head. He froze when he saw her. His expression was not guilt. It was not shame. It was annoyance. "Ava, you're home early." Sarah slunk out behind him, clutching her blouse, refusing to meet Ava's eyes. Ava looked at Jake, at the man she had rearranged her entire life for, the man who had convinced her to quit her beloved barista job for the soulless office position, claiming it was for their future. "How could you?" The words were quiet, brittle. Jake actually sighed. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair and leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Oh, come on, Ava. Don't do this. It's just sex. It didn't mean anything. It meant something to me," she whispered, the groceries forgotten at her feet. She's from my office." Sarah whimpered and tried to slip past, but Ava's voice, now sharp with a pain that was quickly calcifying into rage, stopped her. "Get out, Sarah fled. Ava turned back to Jake, expecting an apology, a plea, anything. He laughed. It was not a small chuckle. It was a full, deep, arrogant laugh that echoed in the hallway. "Her? You're worried about her. Ava, you're replaceable. We all are. Did you really think you were something special? You were comfortable. That's all." The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot liquid rising in her throat. She had given him 3 years. She had cooked his meals, ironed his shirts, endured his moods, and believed his promises. And he was laughing. "I'm leaving," she said. "Fine," he shrugged, walking toward the kitchen, stepping right over the broken eggs. "Your name's not on the lease. Good luck." The humiliation did not end at the apartment. It followed her, a toxic cloud, to the place she had once considered a second home. When she walked into the office the next morning to pack her desk, she found the atmosphere poisoned. People avoided her gaze. Whispers stopped when she approached the coffee machine. Her boss, Mr. Henderson, called her into his office. He looked uncomfortable, adjusting his tie. "Ava," he began, steepling his fingers. "Jake stopped by last night. He expressed some concern for you." The cold dread returned. "Concern? He mentioned you've been under a lot of stress, making repeated calls to his desk, sending emotional text messages, that you've become a bit obsessive." Ava stared at him. It was a lie, a complete, calculated inversion of the truth. Jake was the one who demanded to know where she was every second, who checked her phone, who isolated her from her friends. And now? He had used that control to paint her as the unstable one, the obsessive one. He had not just cheated, he had preemptively destroyed her reputation to cover his tracks. "That's not true," she said, but her voice shook. "Look, Ava," Henderson sighed. "I don't get involved in personal matters, but we can't have this kind of disruption. Maybe it's best if you take some personal leave to sort things out." She knew a dismissal when she heard one. She walked out, carrying her small box of belongings, the laughter of her coworkers, polite but mocking. Following her down the hall, she was 28 years old, homeless and jobless. She moved onto the couch of her old friend, Chloe. It was a kind offer, but the small apartment felt suffocating. Ava spent her days applying for jobs and her nights staring at the ceiling, the sound of Jake's laugh playing on a loop in her head. The flashbacks were relentless, striking her at random. She would be washing a dish, and suddenly she was back in their kitchen. Jake's hand gripping her wrist, his voice low. "You missed a spot. You always miss a spot." "Can't you do anything right?" She would be watching television, and the memory of him taking her phone would surface. "Who is this guy? Why are you smiling at him? You're trying to sleep with him. You're worthless without me. You know that. No one else would put up with you." The gaslighting had been slow, insidious. He had convinced her she was forgetful, clumsy, difficult. "I never said that. Ava, you're crazy. You're imagining things." He had chipped away at her self-worth for 3 years, and she had let him, confusing possession with passion, control with care. After 2 weeks of living on Chloe's couch and with her meager savings dwindling to double digits, desperation set in. She walked back to the Grind, the small downtown cafe where she had worked before Jake, the owner, Sal, a weary man with kind eyes, hired her back on the spot. The work was grueling. Her shifts started at 5 in the morning or ended at 10 at night. She was back to wiping counters, steaming milk and taking orders, the smell of burnt coffee and cleaning solution clinging to her clothes. It was a regression. It was failure. But it was also survival. She'd been back at the Grind for a month when the rain started. It was a cold November night in the fictional city of Belmere, the kind of rain that felt like tiny needles against the skin. It was just past 10 o'clock, closing time. Ava locked the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and began the nightly ritual of cleaning. Her last task was taking the heavy bags of trash to the dumpster in the back alley. She pushed open the heavy metal back door, the hinges screaming in protest. The alley was dark, lit only by a single flickering yellow bulb above the door. The rain was relentless, turning the pavement into a black mirror. She hauled the first bag toward the dumpster, and that's when she saw it. It was not a pile of rags. It was a shape. A man, slumped against the wet brick wall, half hidden by the shadows of the dumpster. Ava's heart hammered against her ribs. Belmere was not the safest city, and this alley was notorious. "Hey," she called out, her voice thin. Are you okay?" He did not move. She took a hesitant step closer, clutching the plastic trash bag. He was large, dressed in an impeccably tailored black suit that was now soaked and stained with something darker than the rain. "Sir?" She was close enough now. She saw the spread of dark liquid pooling on the ground beneath him. It was not water. She smelled the sharp, metallic tang of copper, blood. She dropped the trash bag. Her instinct screamed at her to run, to lock the door, to call 911. But then he groaned. A low, pained sound that was swallowed by the storm. He was alive. She moved closer, her fear battling a deeper, more instinctive compassion. She knelt beside him, the cold rainwater soaking through the knees of her jeans. "Oh, God," she whispered. His face was pale, bruised, but handsome in a severe, angular way. His black hair was plastered to his forehead. She looked for the wound. His suit jacket was open. His white shirt was a ruin of crimson. He had been shot, low, in the abdomen, just below the ribs. She had to call the police. She had to. She fumbled for her phone, but something stopped her, even unconscious. He exuded an aura of danger. This was not a random mugging. This was not a simple victim. This was something else. Calling the police, bringing sirens and questions to this alley, felt like a betrayal of some unspoken rule. He groaned again, his eyes fluttering. Ava made a decision. It was reckless, stupid, and possibly fatal. "Okay," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Okay." She grabbed him under the arms. He was solid, heavy as stone. She was 5'5" and weighed maybe 120 pounds. She pulled, her boots slipping on the wet pavement. He was dead weight. "You have to help me," she grunted, pulling again. With a final, agonizing effort, she dragged him across the threshold into the cafe's small, dry storage room. She slammed the metal door shut, locking it, plunging them into the near darkness of the storeroom, the only light coming from the employees only sign in the main cafe. He was breathing in shallow, wet gasps. She ran to the kitchen, grabbed towels, gauze from the first aid kit, and a bottle of antiseptic. She called the only person she could. Chloe answered on the third ring. "Ava, it's almost 11. "I need your help," Ava said, her voice shaking. "I'm at the cafe. A man. He's hurt. He's been shot." "What?" "Call 911, Ava. Hang up and call the police." "I can't," Ava insisted, the word tearing out of her. "I don't know why. Chloe, I can't. He looks important, dangerous. Please, you're a nurse. Just, please." There was a long silence. "No cops, Ava. I mean it. If I come and there are cops, I walk. I'll be there in 10. Ava hung up and went back to the man. She cut away his ruined shirt. The wound was ugly, a dark hole weeping blood. He was cold. She cleaned it as best she could, her hands trembling. Applying pressure with a stack of clean towels, he smelled of rain, iron, and expensive cologne. Chloe arrived minutes later, slipping through the back door, her face pale. She took one look at the man and swore. "Ava, what did you bring into your cafe? Is he going to die?" "Not if I can help it," Chloe muttered, snapping on gloves from her own kit. She worked quickly, cleaning the wound with professional efficiency, applying butterfly stitches to the entry point. "It's bad. Looks like it missed his liver. Maybe grazed a kidney. He's lost a lot of blood. He needs a surgeon. Ava. And antibiotics. He's going to get septic." "Can you?" "I can stitch him up enough to stop the bleeding, but he needs a hospital." "We can't," Ava said firmly. Chloe sighed, finishing the bandage, wrapping it tightly around his torso. "Fine. I've done what I can. I'll leave you some broad-spectrum antibiotics from my samples. 1 every 8 hours, and water, lots of water. But Ava, he needs a real doctor. And when he wakes up, he might not be grateful. He might be angry. Be careful." Chloe left, and Ava was alone again with the stranger. She propped his head on a rolled-up apron and sat on a stack of flour bags, watching him breathe in the dim light. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, the quality of the silence had changed. She opened her eyes. He was awake. He was staring at her. His eyes were dark, almost black, and intensely sharp. They held no fear, no confusion. They held assessment. He tried to sit up, and a low groan escaped him. "Don't move," Ava said, standing up. "You were shot. You lost a lot of blood." He looked down at the new bandage, then back at her. His gaze was heavy, unreadable. "You," he rasped. His voice was deep, gravelly. "You helped me. Yes. My friend. She's a nurse. She stitched you up." "Why?" he asked. It was not a question of curiosity. It was a demand. Ava hesitated. "You were dying." "People die in that alley," he said, as if stating a fact. "I couldn't just leave you." He studied her face, his eyes tracing her features, lingering on the shadows under her eyes, the exhaustion etched into her face. "You weren't scared." "I was terrified," Ava admitted. A flicker of something, approval, maybe passed through his eyes. He pushed himself up onto one elbow, his face tightening in pain. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ava. I'm Enzo," he said. He did not offer a last name. He did not need to. The name Enzo hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. He looked around the small storeroom. "No police." "No." "My thanks, Ava." He said it simply, but it felt more binding than an oath. "You need a doctor," she insisted. Chloe said, "I have a doctor." He cut her off, his voice quiet but absolute. He was already moving, slowly, painfully, pushing himself to his feet, using the shelves for support. "You can't leave," she protested. "You'll tear your stitches." He ignored her, steadying himself. He reached inside his blood-soaked jacket and pulled out a wallet, but Ava put her hand up. "No, I don't want your money." Enzo paused. He looked at her hand, then back at her face. The unreadable look was back, softer this time, but more intense. He nodded once, slowly. He put the wallet away. He walked to the back door. each step a monument to his willpower. He paused with his hand on the push bar. "You are in danger here," he said, not looking at her. "What?" "This alley, this city. It's not safe for someone like you." "I can take care of myself," she said, the words sounding hollow even to her. Enzo turned his head, his dark eyes meeting hers one last time. "No, you can't." He pushed the door open and vanished into the pre-dawn mist, leaving only a few drops of blood and the lingering scent of iron and cologne. Ava cleaned the storeroom, bleached the floor, and burned the bloody towels in the alley dumpster. When the morning shift arrived at 5:30, she was already behind the counter, pale and shaky, but present, life such as it was. Resumed. She worked. She went home to Chloe's couch. She slept. 3 days passed. The rain stopped. The memory of the man named Enzo began to feel like a fever dream. Then Jake came back. He walked into the grind during the afternoon lull, the bell on the door jangling mockingly. He looked annoyed. "Ava," he said, skipping the greeting and sliding onto a stool at the counter. "You can't be here. Jake, don't be dramatic. We need to talk. This whole breakup thing has gone on long enough. You've made your point. It's not a thing. Jake, it's over. Please leave." He leaned in, his voice dropping to the low, menacing tone she knew so well. "Look at you. Working in this dump again. This is pathetic. You're embarrassing me. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm not yours to be embarrassed by." His eyes hardened. He reached across the counter and grabbed her wrist, his fingers digging into her skin. "Listen to me. You're not going to find better than me. You're nothing without me. We're getting back together. You're going to quit this job, and you're going to apologize to Sarah." "Let go of me," Ava hissed, trying to pull her arm back. "Not until you listen." She looked past him, toward the street, her eyes scanning for a cop, for anyone. And she saw it. Across the street, parked in a loading zone, was a black sedan. It was spotless, expensive, and the windows were tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. It was just sitting there, idling. Jake followed her gaze and scoffed. "What? Looking for your new boyfriend? You're not that lucky." He finally released her wrist, leaving red marks. "I'll be back tonight. Ava, at your friend's place. We're going to fix this." He stormed out, brushing past a customer. Ava rubbed her wrist, her breathing shallow. She looked back at the street. The black car remained for another 10 seconds, and then slowly pulled out into traffic and disappeared. She felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the weather. That night, she heard Chloe come in, laughing. "You will not believe what happened to Jake," Chloe said, tossing her keys in the bowl. Ava sat up on the couch. "What?" "I stopped at O'Malley's for a drink with some friends from the hospital. Jake was there, hitting on anything that moved. He got loud, started harassing one of the waitresses, and then, out of nowhere, 2 massive security guys grabbed him. They just grabbed him? Yep. Said they'd had a tip he was causing trouble, dragged him right out the front door and tossed him onto the sidewalk, told him he was banned. Permanently." Chloe shook her head. "Weird, right? O'Malley's usually lets guys like Jake get away with anything. He looked so humiliated." Ava stayed silent. She thought of Jake's hand on her wrist, the belittling words, the sting of his laughter 3 weeks prior. And then she thought of the black car, idling in the afternoon sun. She thought of a pair of dark, assessing eyes and a quiet, raspy voice. Ava pulled the blanket up to her chin. A strange, new feeling settling in her stomach. It was not fear. It was something else entirely. She was exhausted, broke, and sleeping on a couch. But as she drifted off, she didn't feel replaceable. For the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel alone. She didn't know it yet, but across the city, Enzo Romano was listening to a report from his driver, his bandaged side aching, his eyes fixed on the lights of Belmere. He had started watching. In the penthouse office of a glass tower overlooking Belmere, Enzo Romano stood with his back to the room, looking down at the city lights. His suit jacket was off, his white shirt crisp against the fresh bandage taped securely to his abdomen, the wound still pulled, a sharp reminder of his momentary carelessness. She's a liability. The voice belonged to Marco, his consigliere. Marco was a man in his late 50s, with silver hair and an impeccable devotion to logic. He held a thin file. She's a waitress at a second-rate cafe. No family of note, no connections. Marco continued, his tone devoid of judgment, presenting only facts. And she is currently entangled with this... Jake. Enzo turned slowly. Entangled? He's a problem. Small-time manipulator. We handled his public disturbance at O'Malley's, as you requested, but he's attached to her. Getting involved with a civilian is always messy. Enzo. Getting involved with one who has a desperate, manipulative ex is asking for trouble you don't need. Enzo walked to his desk, the expanse of polished mahogany reflecting the city. He picked up a single, blurry security photo. It was from the alley, time-stamped just minutes before he lost consciousness. It showed Ava, her face pale with terror, dragging him by the armpits. She didn't call the police, Enzo said, his voice a low rumble. She was scared, Marco countered. She was terrified, Enzo corrected, dropping the photo. And she did it anyway. She brought a bleeding man, a stranger, into her workplace and called a friend instead of the cops. Then, when I woke up, she refused my money. Marco sighed. Her pride is admirable. It does not make her bulletproof. This is a distraction from the harbor business. Let me handle it. I can have her ex removed, permanently, and I can give her a sum of money, enough to start fresh, somewhere else, far from here. Enzo looked up, his dark eyes flat and cold. No, you will not touch the man. Not yet. And you will not go near her. Enzo, this is unwise. It is an emotional decision. She is not a decision, Enzo said. She is an interest. I want eyes on her. Only eyes. I want to know where she goes, who she sees. I want to know when he approaches her again, and he will approach her again. Marco closed the file. He knew that tone. The discussion was over. As you wish, boss. Enzo defied the advice, but he knew Marco was right. It was a risk. He continued to watch Ava from a distance, using men Marco would not recognize, men loyal only to him. He watched her leave Chloe's apartment every morning, her shoulders set with a determination that belied the exhaustion on her face. He watched her walk to the grind, her head down, her pace brisk. He saw the resilience, the quiet dignity in the way she carried herself, even when the world had taken everything from her. He saw the kindness she showed to the homeless man outside the cafe, slipping him a coffee and a muffin she had paid for herself. He was drawn to that light, that stubborn spark. He knew what men like Jake did to women like Ava. They extinguished that spark, slowly, until nothing was left but ashes and obedience. And the thought of that happening to her ignited a cold, protective fury deep in his chest. 2 weeks later, Ava's circumstances improved, if only slightly. Chloe's nurse friend had mentioned an opening at the Bellmere Roastery, an upscale cafe in the financial district. The pay was nearly double what Sal offered. The clientele were professionals, and the tips were substantial. She got the job. It meant she was finally saving money, enough to perhaps find her own small apartment in a month or two. But it also meant a new routine and a later walk home. One Thursday night, she finished her closing shift. It was almost 9 o'clock. The roastery was in a clean, well-lit part of town, but the streets were mostly empty, the office towers dark. She pulled her thin coat tighter and started the mile walk to Chloe's. She was 3 blocks from the cafe when she heard his voice. Finally, I've been waiting for you. Ava froze. Jake stepped out from the shadow of a recessed doorway, his face slick with sweat, his eyes wide and frantic. He did not look like the confident man who had laughed at her. He looked unkempt, hair a mess, his shirt wrinkled. Jake, leave me alone. She tried to walk around him. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in hard. Leave you alone? Do you know what you did to me? You ruined me, Ava. I did nothing, she shot back, panic rising in her throat. She tried to yank her arm free, but his grip was iron. You turned them against me, he hissed, pulling her closer. That job. Henderson fired me, said I had a behavioral issue, And O'Malley's? I'm banned. Banned. My clients drink there. I'm a joke. That's your own fault, Jake. Let go of me. No, you're going to fix this. You're going to call Henderson and tell him you were hysterical, that you lied. You're going to... I will not. His face twisted. You selfish bitch. After everything I gave you, you're nothing. You're a barista. You will always be nothing. He raised his other hand, his palm open, and Ava flinched, bracing for the slap. It never came. A shadow detached itself from the alley beside them. A man, dressed in dark work pants and a simple black hoodie, moved with a speed that was almost unreal. He did not punch Jake. He did not yell. He simply caught Jake's raised wrist in one hand and, with his other, applied pressure to the side of Jake's neck. Jake made a choked, gagging sound. His eyes bulged. His grip on Ava's arm vanished instantly as his entire body went rigid with pain. She said, a low voice rumbled, to let her go. Ava stumbled back, her heart hammering. The attacker was tall, his face obscured by the hood and the darkness. He held Jake perfectly still, like a statue, his fingers digging into the man's neck and wrist. Please, Jake gasped, his face turning pale. I don't... You talk too much, the stranger said, his voice a calm, lethal whisper. You put your hands on things that are not yours, and you blame others for your own failings. It's pathetic. The stranger twisted Jake's wrist. Ava heard a sickening, quiet pop. Jake screamed, a high-pitched, desperate sound. If you ever speak her name again, the man said, his voice still terrifyingly soft. If you are ever on the same street as her again, the next sound you make will be your last. Do you understand me? Yes. God, yes, I understand. Jake was crying now, tears of pain and terror streaming down his face. The man shoved him. Jake collapsed onto the pavement, clutching his broken wrist, sobbing. He scrambled to his feet and ran, disappearing around the corner. Ava was shaking so hard she could barely stand. She was pressed against the cold brick of the building, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The man, her rescuer, turned to her. Are you hurt? She stared at him, trying to see his face. No, I don't... Who are you? He took a step toward her, and she flinched again. He stopped immediately, raising his hands slightly, palms out. I'm not going to hurt you. He slowly pulled back the hood. In the dim orange glow of the streetlight, she saw the angular jaw, the dark, intense eyes. You, she whispered. It was impossible. It was the man from the alley, Enzo. He looked different without the blood, without the tailored suit. He looked harder, more dangerous, but it was him. You shouldn't walk alone, he said. What are you doing here? Were you following me? The fear returned, sharp and acidic. I was nearby. It was a lie, but it was a comforting one. A drop of water hit Ava's cheek, then another. Within seconds, the sky opened up. A cold, driving rain began to pour, drenching them instantly. A black sedan, the same one she had seen outside the grind, pulled up to the curb, seemingly from nowhere. The back door opened. It's a long walk to your friend's apartment, Enzo said, his voice competing with the roar of the rain. Let me take you home. No, her refusal was automatic. I don't know you. I don't take rides from strangers. I am not a stranger. Ava, you saved my life. And you just broke a man's wrist. We're even... He almost smiled. The expression was so fleeting. She thought she imagined it. He deserved more. Get in the car. You're freezing. The rain was relentless, soaking her thin coat, plastering her hair to her face. She was shaking from cold and adrenaline. She looked at the warm, dry interior of the car, then back at Enzo, whose entire focus was on her. She made a choice. She ran the few feet to the car and slid inside. Enzo followed, sitting on the opposite side of the plush leather seat, leaving a respectable 3 feet of space between them. He nodded to the driver, and the car pulled smoothly into traffic. The silence inside was absolute. There was no music, only the rhythmic sweep of the windshield wipers and the quiet hum of the engine. The car smelled like his cologne, that same expensive, complex scent of sandalwood and iron. Ava stared out the window, her heart still rattling. She was intensely aware of him. He was not looking at her. He was staring straight ahead, his profile rigid, his hands resting on his knees. He was perfectly, unnervingly still. But she did not feel threatened. Jake had filled the space around him with nervous energy, with demands, with noise. Enzo was the opposite. He was a void, a gravitational pull. He was intense, yes, but he was also respectful. He did not crowd her. He did not speak. He let her breathe. She was wary, her muscles still tight, but a strange, unwelcome warmth settled in her stomach. It was the feeling of being, for the first time, completely and utterly safe. When they pulled up to Chloe's apartment building, she turned to him. "How did you know where I lived?" "I know where you've been staying," he corrected gently. "I told you. I was nearby." "Thank you," she said, her voice small, "for stopping him. He will not bother you again." It was a statement of fact. She fumbled for the door handle. "Ava," he said. She stopped. "You deserve better than to be afraid." She looked at him, really looked at him. He was not just the wounded man from the alley. He was not just the hooded figure who dispensed brutal justice. He was something else. His eyes were not cold. They were deep, and they were watching her as if she were the only thing in the room. She nodded, unable to speak, and fled the car, running through the rain to the lobby door. She did not look back. Later that night, as she was getting ready for bed, Chloe called out, "Hey, Ava, did you order something?" "No, why?" "There's an envelope here. It was taped to the door. Your name's on it." Ava walked to the door. Chloe handed her a plain white business envelope. Her name, Ava, was written on the front in strong, clean handwriting. She tore it open. Inside, there was no card, just a thick stack of $100 bills. She counted it, her hands starting to shake again. $5,000. Tucked inside the stack was a small, folded piece of paper. She opened it. 4 words. For what he took, not charity. The warmth she had felt in the car vanished, replaced by a sudden, hot rage. For what he took. Did he mean the job, her savings, her dignity? He thought he could just pay for it? She was not some project. She was not a stray dog to be rescued and fed. This was not gratitude. This was a transaction. It was what men like him, and men like Jake, did. They used money and power to buy what they wanted. She did not sleep. The next afternoon, she did not go to the roastery. She went to the grind ice. The envelope was heavy in her coat pocket, feeling like a block of ice against her hip. She stormed into the cafe, the bell jangling. Sal was behind the counter. "Ava, nice to see you. You want the usual?" "Hi, Sal. No, I'm looking for someone, a man. He was here a few weeks ago. Late. Tall, dark hair. His name is Enzo." Sal's friendly expression tightened instantly. He stopped wiping the counter and looked at her, his kind eyes suddenly guarded. "Ava, that's not a name you should be saying out loud." "Is he here?" she demanded, her voice rising. "In the back booth," Sal said quietly, nodding toward the darkest corner of the cafe. "He's been waiting for you." She turned. He was there, as Sal said, in the booth she used to sit in on her breaks. He was in an immaculate suit today, a cup of untouched coffee in front of him. He had known. He had known she would come. She marched over, her anger a shield. She slapped the envelope down on the table. It landed with a heavy, satisfying thud. "I don't want this," she said, her voice low and shaking. Enzo did not look at the money. He looked at her. His eyes traveled over her face, noting the dark circles, the defiant set of her jaw. "It is not a gift," he said. "What is it, then?" "A payment for saving your life. For last night." "Do you think you can just buy my gratitude? Do you think you can buy me?" "No. I am not for sale," she hissed, leaning closer. "I just got out from under one man who thought he owned me. I am not trading up for another. I don't care how much money you have or how many wrists you break. I don't want any part of it. Or you." She was breathing hard, the words hanging in the air. Customers were starting to look. Enzo's expression did not change, but a new light flickered in his eyes. It was not anger. It was admiration. Good, he said softly. Ava blinked. Good? I was not buying you. Ava. I was testing you. If you had kept it, I would have walked away. You are not for sale. I know that. I wanted you to know that I know. Her anger deflated, leaving her suddenly, overwhelmingly exhausted. The adrenaline that had been fueling her for 24 hours drained away, and her knees felt weak. She swayed, gripping the edge of the table. Enzo was on his feet in an instant, his hand lightly on her elbow, steadying her. Sit down. I have to get to work. Sit, he commanded. Though his voice was not harsh, she sank into the booth opposite him. Sal appeared, placed a glass of water in front of her, and walked away. I don't understand you, she whispered, staring at the envelope. You've had a difficult few weeks, he said. The money was restoration. He took your job. He took your savings. He cost you your apartment. That was an attempt to level the playing field. It was not charity. It felt like it. Your pride, he said, pushing the envelope back toward her, is your armor. But sometimes, it is okay to accept help. Take the money. Put it in a bank. Use it to get your own apartment, not as a gift from me, as a debt paid by him. I am simply the collector. She looked at him, truly exhausted. I can't, he nodded, accepting it. He picked up the envelope and tucked it inside his jacket. They sat in silence for a long time. The cafe emptied out as the afternoon rush ended. Sal began wiping down the espresso machine. Sal is closing, Ava said, realizing the time. I know, Enzo said. He's leaving the back door for me. Sal gave them a small wave and disappeared into the back, the lock on the front door clicking shut. They were alone. The cafe was dark, save for the ambient light from the street. You're tired of fighting, Enzo observed. A single tear tracked down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. I'm just tired. He moved, sliding out of his booth and into hers. He sat beside her, not touching, but his presence was overwhelming, the smell of his cologne, the heat radiating from his body. He hurt you, Enzo stated. More than just your wrist. He hurt your mind. He made me think I was crazy, she whispered to the table. That I was worthless, that I was replaceable. You are not replaceable. She looked at him. He was so close. His face was severe, all sharp angles and shadows, but his eyes were fixed on her with a burning intensity she had never experienced. It was not desire, not yet. It was focus, as if he was trying to memorize her. Why do you care? She asked. Because, he said, his voice dropping, people who break things should not be allowed to win, and people who save lives should be protected. He raised his hand, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She did not. His fingers, warm and slightly rough, brushed the hair back from her temple. His thumb traced the curve of her cheekbone, wiping away the dampness of her tear. His touch was electric, a jolt that went straight through her. It was not the clumsy, demanding touch of Jake. It was deliberate, reverent. Ava, he breathed. Her own breath hitched. He leaned in, his eyes never leaving hers. He was close enough now that she could feel the warmth of his breath. She saw the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. She was terrified. She was captivated. He leaned closer, his lips just an inch from hers. The tension was a physical thing, a wire pulled taut between them. She wanted to close the distance. She wanted to run. And then he stopped. He held himself there, his gaze searching hers, his hand still cupping her cheek. He was not taking. He was asking. He was letting her decide. Ava stared at his mouth, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She was balanced on the edge of a cliff, and he was giving her the choice to jump or to step back. She didn't move. She just watched him, trapped in the space between her past and a very dangerous, very unknown future. Ava's heart was a trapped bird, beating against the cage of her ribs. Enzo's face was inches away, his dark eyes searching hers, his hand a warm, solid weight on her cheek. The air in the darkened cafe was thick, charged with the question his stillness posed. He had stopped just short, giving her the final, terrifying inch of control. She could not. She closed her eyes, and the image of Jake's laughing face flashed behind her lids. She inhaled, her breath shaking, and placed her hand on Enzo's chest. It was firm, solid. She did not push him away, but she did not pull him closer. "I can't," she whispered, the words tasting like failure. "I'm sorry, I'm broken, I'm not—" Enzo did not flinch. He did not look disappointed or angry. He simply held his position for a beat longer, then slowly, respectfully leaned back. He let his hand fall from her face, but his gaze remained steady and intense. "You are not broken, Ava," he said, "Yissa," his voice a low rumble. "You are wounded. There is a difference." She looked at her hand, still resting on his suit jacket, and quickly pulled it back. I don't even know you." "Then let me fix that," he said. "Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, I'll pick you up, just dinner." It was a risk. Every instinct she had developed under Jake's care screamed at her that this was a trap. Another powerful man, another cage, this one just gilded. But the way he had looked at her, the way he had stopped, the way he respected her no without making her feel small for it, that was something new. That was something she had to understand. "Okay," she said, her voice barely audible. "Dinner." He picked her up from Chloe's apartment precisely at 8 the next evening. The black sedan was the same, but this time, Enzo was in the back, waiting for her. He wore a dark gray suit that looked like it was worth more than her entire life savings. He said nothing as she slid in, just nodded to his driver. They drove through the city, past the roastery, past the financial district, and into an older, wealthier part of Belmere she had only ever seen from a distance. The car pulled into a private underground garage beneath a tall, nondescript building. "Where are we?" she asked, her anxiety returning. "A quiet place," he said, offering his hand. She hesitated, then took it. His grip was warm and secure. He led her to a private elevator. It ascended silently, opening not into a lobby, but directly into the restaurant. It was breathtaking. They were on a rooftop, encased in glass walls that offered a 360-degree view of Belmere. The city lights glittered below like a fallen constellation. The room was filled with perhaps 30 tables, all set with white linens and single roses, but they were all empty. There was a small string trio playing softly in the corner and a single, attentive waiter. "Enzo," she breathed. You rented out the entire restaurant?" He guided her to the best table, the one overlooking the river. "I own it. It's easier this way. No interruptions." She sat, feeling impossibly underdressed in her simple black dress. The waiter poured champagne, and Enzo raised his glass. "To knowing you." She sipped. The champagne was crisp and cold. For the first time, she felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. Here, above the city, she felt untouchable. She felt safe. "Why me, Enzo?" she asked, the question that had been haunting her. "You could have any woman in this city. Most women look at me and see money, or they see fear," he said, setting his glass down. "They see what I can do for them, or what I can do to them. When I was bleeding in that alley, you looked at me and saw a person. That is rare." The waiter brought food, delicate plates of pasta and fish she had not ordered but that were exactly what she would have chosen. "You're watching me," she said. "It wasn't an accusation. I am protecting you," he corrected. "There's a difference." "Everything in the world, he said. "Jake watched you to control you, to keep you small." Ava flinched, the casual accuracy of his words hitting a nerve. Enzo's expression softened. "Tell me about him." Ava looked down at her plate. She had never said the words out loud, not all of them. To Chloe, she had said he cheated. To herself, she had said he was mean. But sitting across from this man, whose stillness demanded the truth, she felt a sudden, desperate need to name the poison. It didn't start badly, she began, her voice low. "It started with care. That's what I thought it was." Enzo leaned forward slightly, his entire being focused on her. He did not interrupt. He just listened. He would pick out my clothes. At first, I thought it was sweet. He'd say, "That dress is beautiful, but it attracts the wrong kind of attention, and I worry about you." So I stopped wearing it. Then it was my friends. Chloe was too loud, a bad influence, jealous of what we had. He'd make me feel guilty for wanting to see her, until I just stopped making plans. She picked up her fork, her knuckles white. He controlled the money. Even though I had my own job, he said I was frivolous and he was good at planning for our future. So I gave him my paychecks, and when I'd forget something, when I'd buy the wrong brand of coffee or be late coming home because the train was delayed, he wouldn't yell, not at first. He'd sigh, he'd look disappointed. He'd say, "I guess I just expected too much of you." He'd make me feel stupid, incompetent. Tears were welling in her eyes, hot and sharp. "And the gaslighting," she whispered, the word tasting vile. He'd tell me I was crazy, that he never said that I was too sensitive or remembering it wrong. He did it for 3 years. He chipped away at me, piece by piece, until I didn't even trust my own mind, until I believed him. I believed I was worthless, that I was lucky he put up with me. She looked up, meeting his eyes, expecting pity. She saw none. She saw a cold, quiet anger, an anger for her, not at her. When I found him, with Sarah, the worst part wasn't the cheating, she admitted, a tear finally escaping and rolling down her cheek. It was his laugh. He laughed at me, like all my pain was just a joke, like I was a joke, replaceable. Enzo said nothing for a long moment. The string trio played a soft, melancholic tune. He slowly reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. His hand was large, warm, and enveloped hers completely. It was not a gesture of possession. It was one of solid, silent support, an anchor. "You," he said, his voice level but laced with something hard as steel, "are the furthest thing from replaceable. Ava, what he did was not care. It was theft. He tried to steal you from yourself." She let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 3 years. She was seen. She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers with his. "And you? Enzo? Who are you?" He held her gaze. "What do you want to know? What do you do? I mean, really, you own this place. You have a driver. You handle people." He smiled, a true smile this time. It transformed his face, chasing the shadows from his eyes. "I'm in the acquisitions business, among other things." "What other things?" He leaned back, taking his hand, and she missed the warmth immediately. "I am a man who handles things people are afraid to handle. I fix problems. I secure interests. My family has been in Belmere a long time. We've helped build it." It was a perfect non-answer. She knew what he was. The name Romano was synonymous with the city's underbelly, with whispers of organized crime, with power that operated parallel to the law. He was the Mafia. "You handle things people are afraid of," she repeated. Does that make you a bad man, Enzo?" He looked out at the city lights. "I am a necessary one. I do not hurt the innocent. I do not tolerate those who do. Does that answer your question?" "No," she said softly. He looked back at her. "Good. It shouldn't—" The détente, the fragile peace they had built on that rooftop, lasted 2 days. The real world came crashing back. Jake had seen them. Or rather, someone had seen them and reported back to Jake, who was now stewing in a potent cocktail of humiliation, professional ruin, and rabid jealousy. Ava was walking home from the roastery when her phone rang. It was him. She ignored it. He called again, and again. Finally, a text message came through. "Pick up the phone. Ava, or I swear I'll be at your friend's door in 5 minutes." Her blood ran cold. She answered. "What do you want, Jake?" "Who is he?" he hissed. His voice strained. "You're sleeping with him, aren't you? Some thug in a fancy car. You really are a whore. Goodbye, Jake." "You hang up on me and I'm going to the police," he screamed, and she stopped walking. "I'm serious. I'm filing a restraining order against you." "What? You're harassing me." "Am I? Or are you an unstable, obsessive ex-girlfriend who can't let go, who is stalking me, who is having her new gorilla boyfriend break my wrist? I'm the victim here. Ava, I'll tell them you're crazy. I'll tell them you're involved in criminal activity. I will ruin you. You think you're so tough now? You're still just that pathetic little barista." He hung up. Ava stood on the street corner, shaking. He was twisting it. He was using the law, the very thing meant to protect people, as his final weapon. He was painting her as the aggressor. She ran the rest of the way to Chloe's, locked the door, and slid to the floor. Hyperventilating, she called the only person she could. Enzo answered on the first ring. "Ava, what's wrong?" She told him, the words tumbling out, choked with tears and panic. "He's going to the police. Enzo, he's going to say I'm the criminal. They'll believe him. They always believe men like him." The silence on the other end was heavy. Absolute. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice lethally calm. "I'm at Chloe's. I'm safe. But what do I do?" "You do nothing," he said. "Well, you lock your door. You stay inside. I'm sending a car. It will be outside your building in 10 minutes. It will not leave. You are not to go anywhere without it. Do you understand? Enzo, I will handle this." He hung up. In his penthouse, Enzo made another call. "Marco, boss, the ex-boyfriend, Jake, I want his life. I want every skeleton, every lie, every person he's ever stepped on. I want the leverage to bury him. You have 1 hour." It took Marco 45 minutes. The report was concise. Jake had blackmailed a professor in college to pass a class. He had been let go from 2 previous jobs for what was termed inappropriate conduct, with quiet settlements paid to 2 female junior employees who had accused him of coercion. He had a gambling debt. He was not just a manipulator, he was a petty, predictable criminal. Enzo listened, his face impassive. "Good. Send the files to our contact at the Belmere PD, and send copies to the HR departments of his last 3 jobs, and to his current landlord." "And to him?" Marco asked. "No," Enzo said. "He doesn't deserve the warning." The next evening, Ava was exhausted. The car Enzo had promised was parked outside, a silent guardian. It made her feel both safe and trapped. She had just finished telling Chloe a heavily edited version of the story when her buzzer rang, a long, aggressive series of buzzes. It was Jake. "Ava, I know you're in there. Open this door, you bitch." Chloe looked at Ava, terrified. "I thought your friend was handling this." "He is," Ava said, but her voice trembled. Jake was pounding on the lobby door now, his voice muffled but furious. "You think your new boyfriend scares me? You're mine. You've always been mine." The pounding was a trigger. The walls of Chloe's apartment felt like they were closing in. The past 3 years, the insults, the gaslighting, the fear, it all came rushing back. She wasn't safe. She would never be safe. He would never stop. Ava crumpled. She sank to her knees in the hallway, covering her ears, sobs tearing from her chest. It was a complete breakdown. She was not the strong woman on the rooftop. She was the girl in the kitchen, being told she was worthless. She didn't hear the apartment door open. She didn't hear Chloe gasp. She only felt it. 2 strong arms wrapped around her, lifting her from the floor as if she weighed nothing. The scent of sandalwood and iron filled her senses. Enzo. He had come up the back stairs. He held her tight against his chest, his hand buried in her hair, cradling her head against his shoulder. He didn't say anything. He just held her, absorbing her sobs, his body a bulwark against the world. He's downstairs," she choked out. "Not anymore," Enzo said, his voice a low vibration against her ear. "My men are explaining the situation to him. He will not be back." He carried her out of the apartment, past a wide-eyed Chloe. "She'll be with me for a while," he said, and Chloe just nodded. He carried her down to the car and didn't let her go. She burrowed into his suit jacket, inhaling his scent, her tears soaking his shirt. He did not take her to the penthouse. He took her to a smaller, fortified apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a safe house. The furniture was minimal but expensive. The lights were low. He carried her inside, locking the heavy door behind them. He set her down in a large room, lit only by a fireplace and a few strategically placed candles. He sat her on a soft rug, then knelt in front of her. He gently wiped the tears from her cheeks with his thumbs. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice raw. "I fell apart. He still has this power over me. "He has no power," Enzo said, his voice fierce but gentle. "He has a memory, and we will erase it." "How?" she asked, her voice breaking. "By showing you what it feels like to be seen," he said. "To be valued, not replaced." He leaned in and kissed her. It was not the hesitant, questioning kiss from the cafe. It was a promise. It was slow and deep and full of a profound, patient hunger. It tasted of safety and power, and she felt herself clinging to him, her hands gripping his shoulders. He broke the kiss, but rested his forehead against hers. "You are not his, Ava. You were never his." He stood, pulling her to her feet. He led her into the adjoining bedroom, where the only light came from the candles in the main room, casting flickering, warm shadows. He turned her to face him, his hands framing her face. "I am not him," he said. "I will not take. I will not demand. You tell me to stop, and I stop. You tell me no, and it means no. This is your choice, only yours." She looked into his dark eyes, seeing not the mafia boss, but the man who had listened, the man who had protected her, the man who had waited. She answered by reaching up and placing a trembling kiss on his lips. That was all the permission he needed, but he did not rush. His movements were slow, deliberate, worshipful. He unzipped her dress, his fingers brushing the skin of her back. She flinched, a small, involuntary movement. He stopped. Instantly. He moved his hands to her arms, his gaze locking with hers. "I am here." He kissed her shoulder, his lips warm. Then he returned to the zipper, sliding it down, pushing the dress off her shoulders. He let it pool at her feet. She stood before him in her simple bra and panties, feeling exposed, vulnerable, her skin prickling with old fears. Enzo's gaze was reverent. He looked at her, at the faint shadow of a bruise on her arm where Jake had grabbed her, at the paleness of her skin. He did not see flaws. He did not see weakness. He knelt. He took her hand, turned it over, and pressed a kiss to the inside of her wrist, right where Jake had gripped her in the cafe. "He will never touch you again." He unhooked her bra, his movements deft, letting it fall. He did not grab at her. He placed his hands on her waist, his thumbs tracing her hip bones, his gaze appreciative, steady. He was honoring her, not devouring her. He gently undressed her, piece by piece, his hands worshiping every part of her, his touch light, as if she were made of priceless glass. He was seeing all the small, invisible bruises left by her past, all the places Jake's words had inflicted their damage, and with every touch, he was healing them. He was showing her, with his hands, with his eyes, what it meant to be truly seen. When she was bare, she did not feel shame. She did not feel replaceable. He stood and removed his own shirt, revealing the white bandage still taped to his ribs. She reached out, her fingers tracing the edge of it. "You're still hurt." "It's nothing," he said, covering her hand with his. He lifted her, laying her on the bed, the sheets cool against her skin. He looked down at her, the candlelight playing over the hard planes of his face, his eyes dark with a desire that was controlled, patient, and all for her. "Ava," he whispered, and her name on his lips was a vow. He came down to her, his body covering hers, his kiss deep and certain, and for the first time in her life. Ava Moretti did not feel like she was falling. She felt like she was finally, safely, being held. Ava woke to the scent of roasted coffee and the unfamiliar weight of expensive sheets. She was alone. The immediate stabbing panic was a reflex, a ghost from her past. Her body tensed, her mind instantly filling with the algorithm of fear Jake had programmed into her. "What have I done? I slept with him. I'm his property now. This is it. This is the new cage." She sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest, her eyes darting around the quiet, sunlit bedroom of Enzo's safe house. The fire had died to embers. His suit from the night before was gone. He was gone. A wave of guilt and self-loathing washed over her. Had she just traded one monster for another? Had she, in a moment of emotional breakdown, given away the very independence she had fought so hard to reclaim? Then she saw it. On the table beside the bed, where a gun or a stack of money could have been. There was a tray. On the tray sat a silver pot of coffee, a bowl of fresh fruit, a warm croissant on a porcelain plate, and a small crystal vase. In the vase was a single, perfect white rose. Ava stared at it. It was not a gesture of ownership. It was not a payment. A dozen red roses would have been a demand, a statement of passion and possession, a single white rose. It was a gesture of respect. It was quiet. It was patient. It was Enzo. The fear did not vanish, but it receded, making room for a warm, spreading confusion. He hadn't stayed to stake his claim. He hadn't left money on the dresser. He had left her breakfast, and he had left her to make her own choice. She got up, her body aching with a strange, pleasant soreness, and found her clothes from the night before, neatly folded on a chair. She showered, the hot water washing away the lingering scent of him, but not the memory of his touch. His slow, reverent hands that had treated her body not as a thing to be taken, but as a map to be read. She drank the coffee. It was the best she'd ever had. She needed to reclaim herself, to prove that she was not just a woman who had been passed from one man to another. She needed the grounding rod of normalcy. The black sedan was waiting outside, as promised, the driver standing discreetly by the door. She walked right past it. "Miss Moretti," the driver called, his voice polite. "Mr. Romano insisted I take you wherever you need to go." "I'm taking the bus," she said, not unkindly. I need to go to work." She felt his eyes on her back as she walked to the corner stop. It was a small, foolish act of defiance, but it was hers. The Belmere roastery was busy. The hiss of the steamer, the smell of burnt sugar, the clatter of cups. It was the soundtrack of her old life, and she fell into it gratefully. She worked through the morning rush, her movements automatic, her mind blessedly blank. The peace broke just after noon. She noticed the whispers first. Two of the other baristas, young women she had been friendly with, kept looking at her and then at their phones, their faces a mixture of awe and pity. Then her manager, Diane, a sharp woman with a permanent frown, called her into the back office. "Ava, close the door." Diane didn't waste time. She turned her computer monitor around. "I need you to explain this." It was a social media post, already shared hundreds of times. A blurry, long-lens photo of her, taken weeks ago, getting into Enzo's car. A second, even grainier shot of them at the rooftop restaurant, their hands clasped across the table. And then the caption, written by Jake. "Everyone, meet my psycho ex, Ava Moretti, the one who claimed I was abusive. Poor, innocent Ava. Here she is, not even a month after she left me, whoring herself out to Belmere's biggest criminal. Enzo Romano, guess she likes the money and the muscle. Can't say I blame her. Mafia whore gold digger, Belmere scandal Enzo Romano." The blood drained from Ava's face. The same tactic, the same preemptive strike. He wasn't just ruining her name, he was attaching it to Enzo's, putting a target on her back. "This is not true," Ava said, her voice shaking. "He's lying, he manipulated those pictures." "Ava," Diane cut her off, her tone weary. "I don't care if it's true. The roastery has a brand. We sell $5 lattes to bank presidents and lawyers' wives. We cannot have this associated with our business. The comments are a cesspool. People are tagging our location. You're firing me." The words were flat, dead. "I'm not firing you," Diane sighed, though it was clear she wanted to. "I'm asking you to take a paid leave of absence, a few weeks, until this noise blows over. It's for your own good, Ava, and for ours. It's reputation damage we can't afford." It was the same words, the same humiliation. She had been branded, not by Jake, but by the world that believed him. "I understand," Ava said, her voice hollow. She unhooked her green apron, folded it, and placed it on the desk. She walked out of the office, through the cafe and into the cold afternoon air, the whispers of her coworkers following her like a cloud of insects. She stood on the sidewalk, shaking, not from cold, but from a rage so pure and white-hot it threatened to consume her. The black sedan pulled up to the curb. The driver, the same man from that morning, got out. "Miss Moretti." His face was impassive. We are aware of the situation. Mr. Romano has already been informed. Good, she bit out. The driver hesitated. He has authorized my team to handle this. The problem can be removed. The posts, the man. It can all be gone within the hour. Permanently. Ava stared at the car. It was the out, the easy way. One nod, and Jake would disappear. His voice, his photos, his memory, erased. It was what the old Ava, the terrified Ava, would have prayed for. But she was not the old Ava. She was the woman who had survived. She was the woman Enzo had seen. No, she said. The driver blinked, surprised. Miss Moretti, he's a threat to you, and to Mr. Romano's interests. He is my past, Ava said, her voice like steel. He took my job, my apartment, and my reputation. I will not let him do it again, and I will not have Enzo's men silence him. That is not justice. That is just more control. Tell Enzo I am handling this. Myself. The driver looked at her, a long, assessing gaze. The professional mask slipped, replaced by a flicker of genuine respect. As you wish. Miss Moretti, where can I take you? You can take me to the City Grill, she said, naming the downtown sports bar where she knew Jake and his dwindling circle of colleagues drank their lunch. And you can wait across the street. The bar's patio was crowded. Jake was there, at a table with 3 other men in cheap suits, holding court. He looked drunk, his face flushed with arrogance. He was showing them his phone, and they were laughing. He was the center of attention again, and he was reveling in it. Ava walked straight through the gate and up to his table. The laughter died. Jake, he looked up, his eyes widening in surprise, then narrowing into a smirk. Well, look who it is. Come to beg. Ava, or did your new boyfriend already dump you? Take it down, she said. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the patio's murmur. What's that, he said, leaning back, playing to his friends. I can't hear you. You'll have to speak up, sweetheart. I said, take the post down. Now, Jake's smirk vanished, replaced by the familiar, ugly twist of rage. Or what? What are you going to do about it? You're nothing. You're a washed-up barista who got fired twice. I'm just telling the truth. You're a liar, she said, her voice cold and clear. And a coward. You couldn't stand that I left you, so you tried to destroy me. You couldn't control me, so you're trying to shame me. It's pathetic. And it's over. Delete the photos, Jake. She reached for his phone, which was sitting on the table. He moved faster. He grabbed her arm, his fingers biting into her flesh, yanking her hard across the table, knocking over glasses. You'll do what I tell you, he roared, his face contorted. You're mine to talk about. She's not yours. The voice was not a shout. It was a low, resonant growl that silenced the entire street. Enzo. He was standing right behind Jake. He hadn't come with his men. He was alone, dressed in a dark suit, his face a mask of controlled fury. His hand clamped down on Jake's shoulder. The one that wasn't broken, Jake screamed, a high-pitched, terrified sound, and his grip on Ava's arm vanished instantly. Enzo pulled Ava back, tucking her behind him, his body a solid wall between her and the world. He did not take his eyes, or his hand, off Jake. The patio was dead silent. A crowd was gathering on the sidewalk. This was not a fistfight. This was an execution. Please, Jake whimpered, his face ashen with a terror that went beyond pain. He was looking at the man who had ordered him thrown out of O'Malley's, the man who had broken his wrist, the man whose reputation was whispered in fear. Enzo, Mr. Romano, I didn't... You were warned, Enzo said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. He applied more pressure, and Jake sank to his knees, sobbing. Enzo ignored him. He turned his head slightly, his gaze finding Ava's. His eyes were dark, but the fury in them was not for her. Are you hurt? He asked, his voice softening just for her. No, she whispered, her hand gripping the back of his jacket. I'm not... He nodded once. That was all. He turned his full attention back to the whimpering man on the ground. You were told to stay away from her, Enzo said. You were told not to speak her name. You put your hands on her. Again. "I'll take it down! I'll take it down right now!" Jake fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking so violently he could barely unlock it. "See? It's gone." He deleted the post, the photos, the entire history. "You humiliate a woman in public," Enzo said, his voice carrying to the watching crowd, "because you are too weak to handle her walking away. You are nothing, a ghost." He leaned down, his voice dropping so only Jake could hear. "You have one chance. You will pack your bags, you will leave Belmere. If I see your face in this city again, if I hear your name, if you even text her, I will not break your wrist. I will end you. Disappear." He released his shoulder. Jake scrambled to his feet, clutching his arm, tears and snot streaming down his face. He was a ruin of a man, stripped bare of all his bravado. He gave one last terrified look at Ava, and then he ran. He pushed through the crowd and disappeared. Enzo stood for a moment, his chest rising and falling. He adjusted his suit jacket, then turned to Ava. The entire patio was staring. He ignored them. He held out his hand. "Let's go home," he said. That night, they sat in the safe house. The fire was lit against the chill, casting warm shadows on the walls. They were on the large sofa, but a careful, respectful foot of space sat between them. "My driver told me what you said." Enzo spoke, his eyes on the flames. "That you wanted to handle it yourself." "I had to," Ava said. "He built my first cage. I had to be the one to tear it down. I didn't know you were there." "I was," he said. "I respect your choice, Ava, but I will not let him, or any man, put his hands on you." He turned to her, his face serious, the shadows in the room highlighting the severe lines of his face. "This is the part where I tell you the truth." Ava's heart stilled. "Okay, this life, my life. What you saw today is part of it, the power to make a man disappear, the fear he felt. It's not clean. It's not safe. Jake was a petty bully. The men I fight, they are not. They are violent and they are powerful. Being with me, it puts a target on your back. The one Jake painted today was metaphorical. The next one will be real." "You're giving me an out," she whispered, realizing. "I'm giving you a choice," he corrected, his voice firm. "You are not my property. You are not my prisoner. I can have a car here in 10 minutes. It will take you to the airport. I will set up an account with enough money to go anywhere, to start a new life, a clean one. You will be safe. You will be free. And you will never have to see me or men like Jake ever again." He was offering her everything. A clean slate, the ultimate escape, the safety she had craved. All she had to do was walk away from him. Ava looked at him. At this impossible, dangerous, honorable man. She thought of her life before him, the constant fear, the feeling of being small, of being replaceable. She thought of Jake's laugh, then she thought of Enzo's hand on her cheek, the single white rose, the respect in his eyes when she'd refused his help. "I've never been safe. Enzo," she said softly, her voice finding a strength she didn't know it had. "My whole life. I've been afraid. With Jake, I was afraid of him. I was afraid of being worthless. You will be afraid with me," he said, his honesty a cold, sharp blade. "Yes," she agreed, and she closed the distance between them on the sofa. "But it's a different kind of fear. With you, I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid for you. I'm afraid of the world you live in. But I am not afraid of the man you are." She reached up, her hand trembling slightly, and touched his face. His skin was warm. "You're the first person in my entire life who didn't try to make me smaller. You're the first person who gave me a choice. And what is your choice, Ava?" he asked, his voice rough with an emotion he held tightly in check. She didn't answer with words. She leaned in. She kissed him. It was not the desperate, grateful kiss of the night before. It was not a kiss of fear, or passion, or need. It was a kiss of clarity. It was slow, and deep, and certain. It was a promise. She was not running to him for safety. She was not choosing him out of desperation. She was planting her feet, taking her own power and choosing to stand with him. He kissed her back, his hand coming up to cup the back of her head, his fingers tangling in her hair. It was a kiss that sealed a new contract, one not of ownership, but of alliance. And in the quiet, fire-lit room, Ava Moretti, the woman who had been told she was replaceable, finally, truly, became anything but. Jake did not disappear. Enzo had stripped him of his job, his reputation, and his apartment. He had broken his wrist and his ego, but he had left him his life, and a pathetic, cornered man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous animal of all. Humiliated, broke, and festering with a toxic jealousy that had consumed his last shred of sanity. Jake went to the one place in Belmere that was worse than him. He went to a dive bar in the industrial district, a place known to be the recruiting ground for the Falcone brothers, the only real rivals to the Romano family. He sat in a dark booth, his good hand shaking, until a man named Rico Falcone sat across from him. Rico was the younger, more volatile of the brothers. "You look like trash," Rico observed, signaling for a drink. "I have information," Jake stammered, his voice slick with sweat. "On Enzo Romano." Rico's interest was piqued. "Everyone has information. Most of it is worthless." "Not this. He has a weakness," Jake spat, the words tasting like acid. "A new woman. He's obsessed with her. He pulled a gun on me in public for her. Her name is Ava Moretti. I know where he's keeping her." Rico leaned in. "Where?" "A safe house. A private apartment in the old tannery district. Floor 5, Unit B." Jake rattled off, the address seared into his memory from the one time he had followed them. "He thinks she's safe there. He thinks he's a king. Use her. Use her to break him. Just give me enough to get out of this city." Rico Falcone smiled. It was a cold, sharp expression. "We can do that." He knew that a direct assault on Enzo was suicide, but an attack on his weakness. That was business. The next evening, Enzo and Ava were in the safe house. A fragile, tense peace had settled between them. They had spent the day talking, Ava learning more about the man, if not the business. He was intense, but he was also surprisingly gentle. He listened. He asked questions about her, and he never once made her feel small. He had just finished making them coffee when he handed her a small, slim black phone. It had no branding, no apps. "What's this?" she asked. "It's not connected to any commercial network," he explained, his face serious. "It's a direct line. There is only one number programmed in it, mine. If you are ever, for any reason, in trouble and I am not with you, you use this. You press the only button. I will hear you. I will find you." Ava turned the heavy, cold device over in her hands. This was the reality of his life. Not rooftop dinners, but emergency phones. "Okay," she whispered. She had just slipped it into the pocket of her jeans when Enzo's own phone buzzed. He looked at it, and his entire posture changed. The gentle man was gone, replaced by the boss. "Marco," he answered. "What?" Enzo listened, his face hardening into a mask of stone. "Falcone, at the South Harbor, now." He paused. "Warehouse 6. Yes, I'm on my way." He hung up and looked at Ava, his eyes dark with an anger that was not directed at her. "There is a situation at my warehouse. Business trap. I have to go." Ava's heart hammered. "Is it dangerous?" "It is something I must handle." He walked to the door, checking the heavy deadbolts. He turned back, his gaze softening as it landed on her. He walked over, cupped her face, and kissed her. A hard, deep kiss that was full of unspoken promises. "Lock this door after me. Do not open it, for anyone. I will be back." He was gone. Ava locked the door, sliding the chain into place. The apartment, which had felt like a fortress, suddenly felt like a cage. The silence was absolute, heavy. She went to the living room, picked up a book, and tried to read. She read the same sentence 4 times. A half hour passed. The only sound was her own heartbeat. Then she heard it. A faint scrape, a metallic click. It came from the hallway. It was the sound of a pick sliding into the high-security lock. Her blood turned to ice. She didn't scream, She didn't freeze. She grabbed the emergency phone from her pocket and ran. She looked for a place to hide, not the bedroom. Too obvious. She darted into the small pantry off the kitchen, a dark, windowless closet, and pulled the door shut, leaving it open, just a crack. Her hands were shaking so violently she almost dropped the phone. She pressed the single button. It connected instantly. There was no ringing. She just heard Enzo's voice, sharp and strained over the sound of a car engine. "Ava?" She didn't speak. She couldn't. She put her hand over her mouth, stifling her own panicked breath. The lock on the front door gave way with a heavy, wooden snap. The door was kicked open, slamming against the wall. 2 men stepped inside. They were large, dressed in dark clothes, and they moved with a cold, professional confidence. "Where is she?" the first one grunted. "Boss said she'd be here." The second one replied, "Falcone wants her. Find her. He said he wants her alive, but he didn't say she had to be in one piece." Ava's sob was silent, a hot stone in her throat. She held the phone up to the crack in the door, praying Enzo could hear. "Check the bedroom," the first man ordered. She heard them moving through the apartment, heard a lamp smash, heard the bedroom door kicked open. "She's not in here. Check the kitchen." Ava squeezed her eyes shut. This was it. This was the target Enzo had warned her about. Nothing. What about the pantry? She heard the heavy footsteps approaching. She saw a shadow fall across the crack in the door. She held her breath, her body rigid. The handle turned. The front door of the apartment did not open. It exploded. It was ripped from its hinges, the deadbolt and chain shearing through the wood as if they were paper. The door crashed to the floor, and Enzo was there. He was not the man who had kissed her goodbye. This was a different creature. His face was pale with a primal rage, his eyes black and burning with a fire that was hotter than hell. In his hand he held a black, heavy gun, and he held it with an absolute, terrifying familiarity. The man at the pantry door spun around, his hand flying to his own hip. He was not fast enough. Enzo did not shoot. He moved. He crossed the living room in 3 long strides and brought the butt of his gun down on the man's wrist. The sound was a sickening, wet crack. The man screamed as his weapon clattered to the floor. Enzo spun, ducking as the second man lunged from the bedroom. He drove his elbow into the man's solar plexus, doubling him over, and then brought his fist down on the back of his neck. The man collapsed, unconscious. It had taken less than 5 seconds. It was brutal. It was efficient. The first man was on his knees, clutching his shattered wrist, whimpering. Enzo grabbed him by the hair, yanking his head back. "Who sent you?" he growled. "Falcone!" the man shrieked, tears of pain in his eyes. "Rico Falcone! He said you were at the harbor. It was a trap." "I know," Enzo said, his voice lethally calm. He dragged the man to his feet and shoved him toward the broken doorway, where 2 of his own men, Marco among them, were now standing. "Get them out of here." He turned to the second, unconscious man. "And send a message back to Rico," Enzo said, his voice dropping. "He used a rat to set a trap. He missed, and he just signed his own death warrant." Marco nodded grimly. The men were gone. The apartment was silent again, save for the cold wind whistling through the broken door. "Ava!" Enzo called, his voice suddenly raw. The pantry door opened, and she fell out, her legs giving way. He caught her, pulling her against his chest, his arms like steel bands around her. She was shaking uncontrollably, clutching the emergency phone in a death grip. "I'm here," he whispered, his lips in her hair, his hand stroking the back of her head. "I'm here. You're safe. I have you." She clung to him, her face buried in his suit jacket, inhaling his scent. She was terrified. She was shaken to her very core, but as she stood there, surrounded by the wreckage, held by this dangerous, violent man, she felt something new. She felt complete, absolute trust. He had come. He had told her he would find her. And he said it was a trap, she whispered, her voice muffled. "You knew. I knew when you called," he said, his voice rough. "The call to the harbor. It was too clean. When I heard them break in, I knew I was not fast enough. "You were here," she said, pulling back to look at him. His face was still hard, his eyes still burning, but this time it was with a desperate fear for her. "Ava," he said, his voice breaking, "I cannot... If they had..." He couldn't finish. She put her shaking hand on his cheek. "Don't send me away. I know what you're going to say, that I'm not safe, that this is what you warned me about." "This place is compromised," he said, his jaw tight. "You are not safe." "Then I'll go where you go," she said, her voice finding a sudden, fierce strength. "I am not leaving you. I am not going to a different city. I'm not hiding. I trust you. Enzo, not out of fear, not because I need saving. I trust you. So, we go." He stared at her. This small, resilient woman who had just faced down his world and was not running. He saw her choice, her clarity, and his love for her settled in his chest. Heavy and permanent as gold. "Okay," he said. "We go." He did not take her to another safe house. He took her home. They drove for 40 minutes, leaving the lights of Belmere far behind, winding up a dark coastal road. They passed through a massive wrought iron gate, guarded by 2 men who nodded at the car. The villa was old, built of dark stone and covered in ivy, perched on a cliff overlooking the black, churning ocean. It was a fortress, beautiful and menacing, and it was his. He led her inside. The interior was warm, rich with dark woods, worn leather, and a massive stone fireplace that was already lit. It was quiet. It was far from the noise, far from the danger. He poured 2 glasses of deep red wine and handed one to her. Their hands touched. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a raw, humming tension in its wake. They had faced death, and they had chosen each other. Ava set her wine down. Untouched, she walked to him, standing so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "They're gone," he said, his voice low. "You're safe here. Ava, no one can reach you." "I don't care about being safe," she whispered, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. "I care about being here." She kissed him. It was not the slow, healing kiss of their first night. This was not about trust. It was about raw, desperate need. It was a kiss of confirmation, a claiming. Her fingers clutched at his shirt, pulling him closer, her body pressing against his. He responded instantly, his control shattering, his arms wrapped around her, one hand sliding up her back, the other tangling in her hair, tilting her head back. His mouth was on hers, intense, hungry. This was the man who had kicked down a door, the man who had fire in his eyes. He broke the kiss only to breathe her name. "Ava." "I'm not his," she whispered, her lips brushing his jaw. "I'm not theirs to take." "You are mine," he growled, and the word mine was not about possession. It was a vow. Mine to protect, mine to fight for. He kissed her again, his lips trailing down her neck, his hands finding the hem of her shirt, pulling it free. She arched into him, her hands fumbling with the buttons of his. They were both shaking, but not from fear, from craving. He lifted her, his mouth never leaving hers, and carried her from the firelit room into his bedroom. He laid her on the vast bed, his bed, and for a second he just looked at her, his eyes dark with an intensity that made her breath catch. He was the most dangerous man she had ever known, and she had never felt more powerful. He came down to her, their clothes disappearing in a desperate, tangled rush. This was not slow. This was not patient. This was the visceral, frantic need of 2 people who had almost lost everything. His hands clutched her hips, her nails dug into his shoulders. It was a collision, a silent, desperate language of skin and breath and whispered promises. "I will not lose you," he vowed, his voice a rough whisper against her ear. "You won't," she promised back, her hands clutching his, their fingers lacing together in a grip that was as strong as steel. "I'm here." They held on, 2 survivors in a storm, claiming each other as the only solid ground. The next morning, Ava woke to the sound of the ocean and the feeling of Enzo's arm heavy and secure across her waist. He was already awake, watching her. The peace of the night dissolved when Marco arrived. He found them on the stone terrace, drinking coffee. "Boss," Marco said, his face grim. He nodded respectfully at Ava. "We have news." The two men from the apartment. They talked. Rico Falcone is furious. He's taken this as a declaration of war. He's mobilizing everything. Enzo sipped his coffee. And the rat? Jake, Marco confirmed. He took the money from Falcone and bought a one-way bus ticket to Chicago. He's gone. He's irrelevant. Good, Enzo said. But the Falcones are not, Marco pressed. They're framing this as you putting a civilian above the business. They know you're here. They know she's your weakness. They're going to use her, or the idea of her, to break you. They're targeting us on all fronts. Enzo stood. The calm, protective lover was gone. The boss was back. He walked to the edge of the terrace, staring at the waves. I'll handle it. Double the guard here. I want men on every inch of this wall. No one gets in. He turned to go inside, presumably to his office, to the armory. Enzo, Ava said, her voice clear and strong. He stopped, turning to her. She stood up. She was dressed in jeans and one of his sweaters, but she stood as if she were wearing armor. You're leaving, she stated. I am going to end this, he said. You will be safe here. I promise. No, Ava said. She walked to him, stopping just in front of him, forcing him to meet her gaze. You told me I had a choice. You said I could leave. I chose to stay. I am not hiding anymore. Ava, this is not a bar fight. This is a war. You cannot be there. They think I'm your weakness, she said, her voice rising with a cold, hard anger he had never heard from her. They think they can use me to break you? Then I am going to stand right beside you when you prove them wrong. I am not a pawn. I am not a prize to be fought over. And I am not your weakness. I will not hide in a villa while you fight for me. I'm with you. This is my choice. Enzo looked down at her, at the fire in her eyes, the unshakable steel in her spine. This was not the woman he had found bleeding in an alley. This was not the woman who had cried in his arms, broken by her past. This was the woman he loved. This was his equal. He stared at her for a long, silent moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. All right, Ava, he said, his voice rough. We stand together. The abandoned warehouse on the South Harbor smelled of rust, dead fish, and betrayal. It was a cathedral of decay, its high, broken windows letting in only slivers of the cold afternoon light. This was Enzo's territory, and he had chosen it specifically for this final negotiation. At one end of the vast, empty space stood Rico Falcone, flanked by 6 of his best men. He was agitated, pacing, his younger brother's recklessness having forced his hand. At the other end stood Enzo, Marco, and 4 of his own men. They were still patient, statues of dark-suited confidence. And in the middle, tied to a steel support pillar, was Jake. He had not made it to Chicago. Enzo's men had intercepted the bus 2 states over, finding him in a sweaty, paranoid sleep. They had brought him back. He was the catalyst. He was the offering. Ava stood just behind Enzo's shoulder. Enzo had argued against it, his voice for the first time holding a note of pleading. Ava, this is not for you. This is the part you are supposed to be safe from. But she had been resolute. He was my monster. Enzo. I will not hide in a castle while you slay him. I have to see the end of him. I have to be there. I'm not that girl in the kitchen anymore. I'm not afraid. Enzo had looked at her, at the steel in her spine, and had finally nodded. He had put her in a state-of-the-art, slim-fit vest, a solid plate of advanced composite hidden beneath her dark sweater. It was a chilling, intimate gesture, buckling the straps over her ribs, his hands gentle. You do not leave my side, he had commanded. Not for an inch. Now, she stood beside him, her heart a cold, hard stone in her chest. Enzo, Rico Falcone called out, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. You've made this messy. You put a civilian over the business. You broke the rules. You brought this on yourself. There are no rules when you target my home, Rico. Enzo's voice was calm, conversational, but it carried a deadly weight. You used a rat to set a trap. You sent your animals after her. This is not business. This is an insult, and I am here to accept your apology. Rico laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Apology? You're here to beg. She's your weakness. Everyone in Belmere knows it. You're soft. It was then that Jake, who had been whimpering, seemed to find his last shred of venomous courage. He saw Ava. He saw his chance. This was his last stage. "She is soft," he screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. "She's a pathetic, crazy whore. I told you. I told all of you." Ava flinched, the old poison still holding a sting. Jake, feeding on the attention, became more frantic. "She's nothing. She's a replaceable, stupid little barista. She's good for one thing, Enzo, and you know it. She'll ruin you. She's worthless. She's mine." The warehouse went silent. Rico Falcone smiled, enjoying the show. Enzo's men tensed, ready for the order. But Enzo did not look at Jake. He did not look at Rico. He turned to Ava. The entire tense negotiation, the armed men, the fated rival, all of it faded away. In the center of the cold, dangerous warehouse, he looked at her as if they were the only two people in the world. He ignored the spittle-flecked screams of the man who had tried to destroy her. Slowly, deliberately, he reached out and took her hand, his fingers laced with hers, a warm, solid anchor. Then he leaned in and pressed a soft, firm kiss to her forehead. He turned back to Rico Falcone, still holding Ava's hand tightly at his side. "You're not his mistake," Enzo said, his voice quiet but ringing with absolute public possession. He was speaking to Ava, but he was pronouncing a sentence on everyone else. "You're my future." Rico's smile vanished. He had lost. He knew it. He had tried to expose a weakness, and Enzo had just revealed it as his primary source of strength. He had made her his queen in a room full of soldiers. "So," Rico said, his hand slowly moving to the inside of his jacket. "No apology, then." "No," Enzo said. It happened in a heartbeat. Rico's hand came out, not with a gun, but as a signal. His men opened fire. Ava didn't even have time to scream. The world exploded in a cacophony of gunfire, the sound magnified 1,000 times by the metal and concrete. Marco shoved Ava back as Enzo spun, not to shoot, but to cover. A bullet whined past her ear. So close, she felt the heat of it. "Enzo!" she screamed. He was there. He threw himself in front of her, his body a solid wall, shielding her completely. He pushed her down, landing hard on top of her. His arms wrapped around her head as bullets chipped the concrete pillar where she had just been standing. He was a living shield, his entire being focused on one thing, keeping the world from touching her. She heard him grunt, a sharp intake of breath. "You're hit," she cried, her voice muffled against his chest. "It's the vest," he growled, his breath hot against her ear. His own gun now out, firing back over his shoulder at targets he seemed to sense rather than see. The shootout was brutal, loud, and incredibly short. Enzo's men were better trained, better positioned. The echoing chaos died down, replaced by the sound of groaning and the drip, drip, drip of water from a broken pipe. Enzo pushed himself off her, his eyes wild, checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt, Ava? Look at me." "I'm fine," she panted, her ears ringing. "You?" "I'm fine." Marco walked over, reloading his weapon. "Rico's gone, fled out the back. 2 of his men are down. The rest scattered." Enzo nodded, pulling Ava to her feet, and then they all looked at Jake. He was unharmed, still tied to the pillar, his eyes wide with animal terror, a dark stain spreading on the front of his pants. He had watched the entire thing. "Please," he whimpered. "Enzo, please, I'm sorry, I'll do anything, just let me go. Please don't kill me." Enzo looked at him, his face devoid of all emotion. He walked over, the sound of his dress shoes on the gritty concrete the only sound. He stood in front of the man who had started it all. "You were right, Jake," Enzo said softly. "She's not replaceable." He raised his gun. Jake shrieked, squeezing his eyes shut, and then they heard it. A new sound. Sirens, not distant but close, getting closer. A single police car, its lights flashing, sped into the warehouse, skidding to a stop. A lone policeman got out. He was older, heavy-set, with a weary look on his face. He ignored Enzo and his armed men. He ignored the bodies. He walked directly to Jake, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "Jake?" the cop asked, pulling a piece of paper from his pocket. "Jake Anderson?" Jake, in his terror, could only nod, his mouth working silently. "You're under arrest," the cop said, his voice bored. He began unlocking Jake's ties to the pole. "What?" Jake gasped. "For what? What are you—" "Let's see." The cop read from the paper. 2 counts of coercion stemming from a complaint filed by a Miss Henderson in 2019. 1 count of blackmail from a Mr. Davies at Belmere University. Oh, and about a half dozen pending harassment claims. Looks like your old life finally caught up with you, son. Ava stared, her hand finding Enzo's. She looked at him. His face was calm. He had done this. He had not sent the files to the police to warn Jake. He had sent them to this specific officer to build a case. He hadn't planned to kill Jake. He had planned to bury him, using the very system Jake had tried to weaponize against her. It was the coldest, most brilliant revenge she could have imagined. But them, Jake shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at Enzo as the cop cuffed him. They just had a shootout. They've got guns. The cop sighed, pulling Jake to his feet. All I see is a citizen's arrest. Kid, looks like Mr. Romano and his security team apprehended a dangerous fugitive. We'll sort it out at the station. He winked. A fast, barely perceptible motion. At Enzo, he shoved Jake toward the car. You have the right to remain silent. No, Jake screamed, his voice echoing, a pathetic, desperate sound. You can't do this. I'm the victim. Ava, tell them. Ava just watched him, her face calm. She felt nothing. No pity, no fear, no anger. He was just gone. The ghost had been exorcised. As the police car's sirens faded into the distance, Marco turned to Enzo. Rico Falcone won't let this go, boss. Yes, he will, Enzo said, holstering his weapon. He knows what I did here. He knows I control the street, and I control the law. And he knows what I am willing to do for her. He understands. It's not worth it. Enzo turned, his suit jacket singed, a scrape on his cheek. He looked at Ava. It's over. Back at the villa on the cliff, the silence was a heavy blanket. The sun was setting, turning the ocean outside the vast windows to a sheet of bruised purple and blood orange. Ava was gently dabbing an antiseptic wipe on the scrape on Enzo's cheek. He had a deep, ugly bruise forming on his ribs where he had taken a bullet for her, the vest having saved his life but not his skin. She finished, her hands trembling now that the adrenaline was gone. He was still, his eyes closed. He's gone, she whispered, more to herself than to him. Enzo said nothing. His hand, resting on his knee, started to shake. It was a small tremor, but it grew, a violent, uncontrolled vibration. He put his head in his hands, his broad shoulders hunching. A sound tore from his chest, a low, ragged groan that was part sob, part roar. The boss was gone. The king was gone. All that was left was the man. Enzo, she whispered, her heart breaking. He reached for her, pulling her from her seat, onto his lap, burying his face in her neck. His arms were steel, crushing her to him, as if he was afraid she would dissolve. He choked out, his voice thick, his body shaking against hers. I almost lost you, in the car, on the way there. All I could see was that door, what was behind it, Ava, if I'd been 1 second later. He was not a man who cried. He was a man who bled, who fought, who commanded. But now, in the safety of her arms, he was letting himself feel the terror he had held at bay, the terror of failing her. The armor had cracked, and the man underneath was raw, and he was hers. Ava did not coddle him. She did not shush him. She held him, her hands strong and sure. She stroked his hair, her own fear finally receding, replaced by a fierce, protective love. She waited until the shaking subsided. Then she pulled back, taking his face between her hands, forcing him to meet her gaze. His eyes were red-rimmed, his defenses utterly gone. Look at me, she commanded softly. He did. I am here. You were not late. You saved me. And I am not afraid. Ava, this life. I know, she said, her thumbs tracing his cheekbones. I'm not afraid of them. I'm not afraid of Rico Falcone. I'm not afraid of what's next. And I am not afraid of loving you. He searched her eyes, seeing not a victim but a survivor, his partner, his equal. He leaned his forehead against hers, his breathing finally evening out. You are my future, he whispered. And this time, it was not a proclamation, it was a plea. "And you are mine," she replied. 3 months later, the bell on the door of Belmere Books tinkled. Ava Moretti looked up from the register, a warm, genuine smile on her face. The small, sun-drenched bookstore was her new job, a place of quiet and stories, a place she had chosen. She was wearing jeans and a simple blue sweater, her hair tied back, her eyes bright. She looked independent, she looked strong, she looked, finally, at peace. "Ready?" Enzo asked. He was leaning against the doorway, his suit casual, his tie loosened, to the other customers. He was just a handsome, intimidating man. To her, he was home. "Just about," she said, grabbing her coat. She locked the door, and he took her hand. They walked out into the 5 o'clock bustle of the city. Just two people, their fingers laced together. They were not headed to a rooftop restaurant or a fortified villa. They were going for dinner. "Italian?" he asked. "I was thinking—" "Burgers," she said. A playful light in her eyes. He laughed, a real, unguarded sound that still made her heart leap. "Burgers it is." They walked down the street, melting into the crowd, a king and his queen disguised as ordinary people. The world still turned, dangers still lurked in the shadows of Belmere. But as they walked, hand in hand, one thing was certain. She's not his anymore. She never was. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We truly hope you enjoyed the journey of Ava and Enzo. We love creating these worlds for you, and we would be honored if you'd let us know where in the world you're listening from. Please drop a comment in English to share your thoughts on the story. And if you loved this, please consider subscribing to Mafia Romance Stories for many more tales of danger, passion, and survival. We can't wait to read what you have to say.